Hello and welcome to another edition of ATV Around the Valley. As always, I'm Arshir Sarian. I'm joined by Kenny Hodges. We're excited every time we get to do these because we're talking about the one thing we're very passionate about, and that's athletics. We're talking high school athletics, and today we got girls volleyball. Season is wrapped up. The brackets have been released. Everybody knows where they're playing, where they're going. There's some exciting things in this bracket. What we're going to do is we're going to dive into the season just a little bit, and then we're going to dive into these brackets. Kenny, how are you doing?
Man, I am doing excellent. It's always great when we get to dive into this interscholastic sports that we are dealing with here in the San Fernando Valley. There's so many teams. There's been so much good volleyball played all year, and now it is time. It is put up or shut up time. It is win or go home time. It's hardware collecting season. It's ring season. These young ladies have been putting it all on the line all year long, and it's time to go into what we have in front of us with the postseason in hand. So we have our brackets, but before we dive into the brackets, let's take a quick recap of our league champions headed into postseason. When you go back, let's start in the East Valley. Grant has been a top team in the city all year. They collect back-to-back East Valley championships, finishing 11-1 in league with 24 wins on the season. Congratulations to Grant. Now we'll get into where they fit in the postseason. Over to the Valley Mission. The Kennedy Cougars go back-to-back in the Valley Mission. Another successful campaign, 11-1. They take the Valley Mission title after a tough, hard-fought battle up at the top of that league. And over to the West Valley, craziness playing out at the end of the regular season. These teams are all so good. It was crabs in the bucket all season, trying to climb to the top of this league. The defending champs end up finishing third in the league in Taft, even though they still remain one of the top contenders to win a championship in the open division. But it was co-champions Cleveland and El Camino. Elko's first title since 2015, and Cleveland's first share of the title in the West Valley ever for this program. So congratulations to those two programs, especially a team like Cleveland, who you go back a few years, they were kind of always sitting around the basement of the West Valley to see what their coaching staff, to see what those players have done this season and turning the tide in the direction of that program. And they are the co-champions along with Elko, another team that's young and their best days are still ahead of them in that West Valley. Moving over to the Valley 3 leagues. Over in the Valley League, Sochis, undefeated regular season in the league, 18 wins overall, their first outright Valley title since 2021. The Sochis Knights, they look like they're ready to make some noise in the postseason. Congratulations to them winning the league. Over to the North Valley, the Triumph Jaguars, a team that has been excellent in this league, 5 straight league titles, back-to-back undefeated league seasons. Triumph is another team. They are ready to make noise in the postseason. They got a big roadblock in the first round. We'll get into that. And the last but not least, Central Valley champs, Sun Valley Magnet, another team that has been dominant in the Valley 3 scene. 12-0 regular season, their 4th straight league title, 40 straight Central Valley wins. This team has been hard to beat by the teams in their league. They've been hard to beat overall this year, picking up 23 victories. And that is your league champions. So, Arshavir, before we get into the brackets, give me some of your thoughts about what we've seen in the volleyball scene in the San Fernando Valley as we get ready to head in the postseason.
I got 3 takeaways, and it was one from each of the other 3 leagues, the quote unquote say big leagues. Mm-hmm. The way they were dubbed back in the day. We don't like using that designation these days, but so I will start in the Valley Mission. It was a repeat year for Kennedy taking their league. They had some battles. There was nothing came easy in that league again, as has been coming lately. Even though they didn't lose very many sets, Reseda put up a fight, and this is a Reseda team that we've watched, and there's a Reseda team that has been egging us and telling us, hey, you need to pay more attention to us. And so as we look, they keep proving that we do need to keep pay attention, and everybody needs to pay attention. And they got a D1 berth out of it, and that's something we're going to dive into here in a bit. And they've been able to hang with some programs. So, Reseda put their money where their mouth is this season. Last year they told us they weren't satisfied with winning a city championship, and they weren't satisfied with, where they got in the state tournament, and they wanted more. And this year they went out and they scheduled like it, and they played like it. And so now it's time. They're in there. So that's the one there. I'm going to move over to that insane situation out in the West Valley League. It was the biggest nail biter as things went down heading into that final week. And the craziest of all crazies, we entered with a 3-way position, and all Cleveland had to do was win 2 games. And we say all they had to do, right? They had 2 5-setters. And what do? They earned themselves a share of the league championship. El Camino and Taft, similar. They finished on that wild Wednesday with the winner guaranteed a position. So that conundrum of league, that was awesome. And these teams cannibalized each other a little bit, which is reflective in the rankings, which we'll get into. So that stood out for me. Insane. And then I'll go to the East Valley. The one that stood out was Arleta stepping up and saying, no, Grant, you might have been that team last year, but we're going to challenge you. And they split the season series. This looked like it could have been a co-championship until the end, when Paulie reminded us that, they still have a bit of a pedigree. And they knocked off Arleta at the end of the season, denying them a share of that league title. So the East Valley, still competitive. Kudos to Arleta for everything they did. I mean, we talked up Grant. They've had an amazing run. They have an amazing staff. And Arleta has shown us that they have one as well. And again, that's not talking down or knocking any of the other staffs in that league, Paulie, Verdugo Hills. But for where they're at and what they did, Arleta's undefeated run was great. And then they followed it up with another run. So that was the one that stood out for me there. We've got some great things going on. And I'm excited to dive into these brackets.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself in terms of everything we've seen this season. We had so many quality teams. It was something we talked about when we were going through the last volleyball check-in, where we talked about the quality of play emanating from our own backyards. It is a privilege to be able to see so many hardworking coaches and staff, so many young ladies who have put the time in and the effort to get better, to compete. And now we have a situation where we're heading into the postseason, and there are so many possibilities. We have possibilities for all Valley matchups for titles. We have the possibility that we could walk away with a title in just about every division, because that's how much quality that exists. And without further ado, let's get into these brackets. We have 6 brackets that make up the CIF City section. We have representatives sprinkled throughout all of them. We have 33 teams, in total across the 6 brackets, competing for city championships, vying for glory. And we're going to start looking at the D5 region. Now, in the D5 region, we don't have a ton of representatives. We only have 2, and they'll both be competing in first-round matches, essentially playing matches in D5. And those matchups are number 20 Fremont Pathfinders are taking on the Magnolia Science Van Nuys Mustang. Those 2 teams will compete in a play-in matchup to see who gets to move on to the second round. Also, the Monroe Vikings, the last team in from the Valley, the last team in out of the East Valley, the Monroe Vikings and the number 18 seed taking on Downtown Magnet Suns. They also will be competing in that first round play-in to get into the second round, that round of 16 in the D5 bracket. Also, moving on to D4, we only have 2 teams that are participating there in this bracket. They're the number 15 and number 16 seeds. The number 15 seed Lakeview Charter Lions will be taking on the number 18 seed Alliance Bloomfield Bulls in that first round play-in on Monday. Also, the Voches Vanguards, the number 16 seed, they'll be taking on the number 17 Stern Titans, also in a play-in matchup. Oh, matter of fact, I'm sorry. We do have more than 2 teams. Those are the 2 teams that are competing in the play-in. We have teams in the second round matchups. We actually have 3 participants and 1 all-valley matchup. The number 12 Mace's Nighthawks will be taking on the number 5 Fulton Jaguars. Fulton is a sneaky team. That is a team that has some impressive wins on their resume. Look out for them to be able to make a strong run in D4. And also the all-valley matchup in the 8-9 matchup. The Van Nuys Wolves out of the Valley Mission League, the number 8 seed, they'll be taking on the number 9 seed Lake Balboa Cougars. So we have that all-valley matchup. That's the first all-valley matchup we've come across so far. And we also have Fulton Jaguars at a number 5 seed, putting them in a good position to make a decent run. So let's move on to the D3. Now we start getting into the meat and potatoes. We start to see where some of the quality shines through so in this season. And let's start with that first round play-in matchup. We have 1 team in the play-in. That's the Community Charter Titans. They're the number 19 seed. They'll be taking on the number 14 seed Gertz Wetzler Pumas. And whoever wins that matchup, if Community is able to pull out the win there, they'll be taking on the number 3 seed Chavez Eagles, who are waiting for the winner of a play-in matchup. They're the number 3 seed in D3. Also in this bracket, the number 4 seed Sun Valley Pioneers, they'll be waiting for a winner of a play-in. The Poly Parrots, the number 2 seed, they'll be the winner of the P8A play-in matchup in the first round. And the top seed in in D3, the Panorama Pythons, they'll be waiting. They're on the bye, waiting for the winner of a play-in matchup. We also have 3 other teams. Birmingham Patriots, the number 7 seed, they'll be taking on number 10 Alliance Levine Tigers in the second round. And we have 1 all-valley matchup in Division 3. The number 9 Verduga Hills Dons taking on the Northridge Academy Pumas in an 8-9 matchup in D3. So there's a lot to sort of unpack here. As a brag to the Valley, we've nabbed the top 4 seeds here in D3. We have some familiar names here that are normally in higher divisions, but like Verdugo Hills, they're in this bracket. They've got an all-valley matchup with the Northridge Academy Pumas, and we have the Birmingham Patriots here. Is there anything that stands out to you when you look at this Division 3 bracket?
The 2 rebuilding programs, in Verdugo Hills and Birmingham, there's enough pedigree. They might be rebuilding, but they have, seniors and juniors in the program that were, in these deeper runs the last couple years. So there's nothing really truly new there for them when they get into this area. I wouldn't be surprised if either of them, kind of shocks the world as a lower seed and goes on a run. There's pedigree there. But it's going to be some interesting matchups. If the Dons get by Northridge Academy, they could spring that upset of the number 1 seed in the quarterfinal. If Birmingham gets by Alliance Levine, they could spring the upset of the number 2 Poly Parrots. But Poly still has some quality from years before. And it's interesting, and even they're a program that was D1. And so this D3 bracket is littered with teams that were in higher divisions recently. They've dropped down because volleyball before the season, that's how they do it. These teams dropped down and they were like, look, this is our roster, this is what we have, this is what we graduated. And so they set it up in ways where now we've got some interesting matchups here. The D3 is going to be one to keep a very, very close eye on.
Yeah, for sure. It just makes me think like one team struggle is another team's opportunity, right? Yes, these are down years for some of these programs, but then when you look at the way they sit here in these these brackets, even a team like Birmingham that has taken absolute lumps this year with how tough of a schedule they're born into in the West Valley, but then how they schedule even outside of the West Valley. It's all to take a young team and get them caught up to speed really quickly. And this is an opportunity to say, hey, we left the regular season behind. We know what good volleyball looks like. We've had to try to play up to competition all year. Now there's some stuff that's on our level. Let's go out here and show everybody what we can do. That's why a team like them really scares me sitting in this bracket, because this could be an opportunity for them to really take something to build on into next season, like we've seen with a lot of these teams that are in one division, go on a deep playoff run, and then it sets that whole program on course for the next year or two, right? So we've seen that with like Cleveland in past seasons. We've seen that with other teams. So this could be Birmingham's opportunity. But just the idea that you have a bracket where the top 4 seeds are all teams that you care about in your own backyard, it just gives you so much promise and hope that we could end up in the semis and be like, hey, it's gravy. We know we got a real shot. We know it's a guarantee that somebody's bringing home a title. So you get excited when you just see how this bracket has sort of played out and laid itself out. And there's a myriad of good options going forward to see who can come away with a championship here. So let's leave that conversation for D3 there. So much good volleyball to come there. But let's move into Division 2. D2, not as many teams here, but we do have some quality teams who have had some quality moments this season. And we'll start with the first round matchup. The Canoga Park Hunters taking on the number 16 Naces Wolfpack. Canoga's had a bit of an up and down season, but that's to be expected when you compete in the Valley Mission the way that they do. So we'll see what happens with them going forward in the postseason. Also in this bracket, the number 1 seed comes from one of the Valley 3 teams, the East Valley Falcons. Take the top seed in the D2 bracket. They'll be taking on number 16 Harbor Teacher in the first round. Also, we have an all Valley matchup in this matchup, which is always fun to us because that guarantees we have somebody moving on. Also, it's great. Those matches tend to be good because there's a familiarity there. These teams usually see each other at some point during the season, and that's the number 5 NoHo Huskies taking on the number 12 seed San Fernando Tigers. That one promises to be a good matchup. Do you have any thoughts about what could happen here in D2 with these teams?
It's going to be a couple really, really interesting matchups. Like you said, Canoga has been in a situation where they battle through in league. There's nothing really easy that they go through. I mean, look at what you've got in terms of, Panorama being the top seed in D1. You got Kennedy and Reseda as top teams, in their respective areas. And so that's a team that is already battle tested. And East Valley has been playing up. They try to play as many teams as they can. So it's always good to see schools, honestly, regardless of size, regardless of what, when they get bit by that piece of belief, like, hey, okay, we believe, and then they schedule like it, and then they get rewarded with a top seed, and that's a team that's going to earn their run. I think they can actually make a good run. And then looking at that San Fernando North Hollywood matchup, yeah, it's a bit of a bummer that they got to play each other so early, but it's exciting, and that's kind of a big one because that'll set the tone for the rest of that top half of that bracket.
Yeah, for sure. The team to me that stands out here is North Hollywood. That's a team that you got to watch out for. They're sitting here in D2, but they are literally 1 or 2 close losses away from being a team that easily could have either been top seed here or squeeze their way into D1. They have been highly competitive with some top competition. It even when you looked at them playing Arleta and Grant in their own league, they played them tough. They played Poly tough. This is a team that has some real grit and some metal to them. This is a team that's sitting in a real sweet spot in this bracket. You win this game, you move on. They could be one of those teams that gets hot and maybe finds themselves in a D2 semi or even a D2 championship. So let's look at Division 1. This is a juicy bracket here. We have 8 teams in the D1 bracket. Had literally 50% of the bracket is all us here in the Valley. We have a few all Valley matchups that are going to take place in D1, including a couple that I've looked at as soon as the bracket came out, and I said, anybody but them, not them playing each other. Well, let's go through it. Starting with the number 2 seed, Grant Lancers. They're the number 2 seed in D1. They'll be taking on the number 15 seed, Vaughn White Tigers. They'll be favored there, but don't be surprised if that's a good 4 or 5 set match, because Vaughn is one of those tough teams that deserves to be in D1. Also, number 6 seed, the Arleta Mustangs, the runners-up in the East Valley. They'll be taking on the number 11 seed San Pedro Pirates in the first round. That's just interesting because that then puts them in a position where they will end up on the same side of the bracket as Grant, maybe potentially setting up a semifinal matchup down the line. Who knows if things break right. Sochis, the number 5 seed, they'll be taking on the number 12 Reseda Regions. As my co-host just pointed out, Reseda is one of those teams with a pedigree. They're tough. That's not exactly the 5-12 matchup you might have wanted to draw if you're Sochis. We know how those traditionally across multiple sports, what 5-12 matchups tend to look like. There's usually always one that gets a little spooky. This could be one here with Reseda sitting there in the 12th seed. Moving over, number 13 seed, the Sylmar Spartans. They'll be taking on the number 4 Marshall Barristers. And last but not least, we have an all-Valley matchup between 2 very, very good teams. The number 3 Kennedy Cougars, the Valley Mission champs, taking on the number 14 seed Triumph Jaguars, who are also the North Valley champs. So we got a champion versus champion matchup in first round in D1. So what stands out? There's so much. It's hard to pick. But what really stands out to you when you look at all of this great action we're going to have in D1?
There's a lot, like you just said. I'm gonna hone in on these all Valley matchups because as great as that Arleta San Pedro matchup is gonna be, these all Valleys are really just standing out insanely. Like Vaughn is a team to not be underestimated. They've played tough all season. I believe I'm looking at it right now. I wanted to confirm, and I was right. Vaughn is a team that defeated Reseda. So they've beaten a defending city champion. They're not daunted at all by facing Grant. That, I believe, is going to be ultimately that'll be a fight of natural talent versus hard work. And it's not to say Grant doesn't work hard, but that's a program that has some really, really high-end skill. And so can Vaughn work hard enough and let their skill come through at what they do and make this a crazy battle? Kennedy Triumph, it almost seems like we've talked about it in football a lot. Like, hey, amazing season, congratulations, here you go. You just kind of get stuck in the situation against the program that, it's great, and this was a matchup I would have loved to have seen way later in the bracket. I think Kennedy's gonna have to work just a little bit to triumph. These girls they've been around for a little bit in terms of how well they've played and how well that program is actually establishing itself. So I like that. in terms of what Triumph has done. I don't like the matchup in the first round. Man, I wish that came later. And then the next one, Sherman Oaks and Reseda. Socius has had one heck of a season in the way that they've played. You know, you look at some of the teams they built. You look at the comparables between these teams and how they've scheduled and what they've done, and that shows why they're ranked so much higher than Reseda. You know, and this one, I 100% believe this is going to be a 5-set battle. I think these two are going to go at it. They're going to go all the way to the end, and winner's going to take. It's going to be a situation where they're going to set themselves up for a decent run. Whoever takes this one, man, this is another one I wish wasn't in the first round.
When we talk about Triumph and Kennedy, you're talking about teams that kind of maybe didn't get done favors. What's funny is in some respects you could say that about Triumph, but I feel like Kennedy is the one that got screwed here, because at the end of the day, watching that Triumph team this year, I went into the playoff saying, boy, whoever lines up in front of this team when they feel like they've got so much to prove. Triumph was the team that reached out to us before the season and said, hey, we got a special group. You guys should pay attention to us this year. And and for a team to reach out to you in that way and then go out and prove it, you want to take them at their word that this is not a team to be messed with at this time of year. And Kennedy looks up, and that's who's going to be lined up across a team that, quite frankly, it would be very easy for some of the Valley 3 teams to kind of be intimidated when you come to postseason and you got to go play against the bigger charter schools. But when you have a pedigree like they have, where they've just been whooping up on people for a long time now, and they feel like this is the group that's ready to actually put some hardwood, put a city title in the bank, like that's a team that's not going to lack confidence when they walk into the gym this week. So that's a very, very, very intriguing matchup. And yeah, like you said, our leaders at a 6 seed in D1. But they're that's a sneaky 6 seed. We know what we know what that program is. That's a team that gets to slide under the radar a little bit because Grant has kind of shown that championship potential. But beware of that, because I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, those young ladies, they're not looking past their opponents. But boy, if they can get their hands on Grant one more time, what that group has to be thinking that. If we could just see him one more time, make them beat us again. Because from their perspective, hey, they won the league. We slipped up at the end, but we did beat them. That loss they had in league was to us. So that's just going to be interesting to see if we can get there. So let's move on to the heavyweight bracket. This is a bracket that features all the teams that everybody has seen putting belts to people all year long, playing all the tournaments, grueling schedules, playing Southern Section teams. That's what you have here in this bracket. The dogs of dogs and the 8 teams that are going to duke it out for the Open Division Championship. So let's go through the matchups. We've got 5 teams. Pretty much the West Valley. You could rename this playoff the West Valley Invitational, because we got the entire West Valley outside of Birmingham sitting in this bracket. We have in the first matchup, the number 1 seed, Venice Gondoliers, very deserving number 1 seed. They'll be taking on the upstart Chatsworth Chancellors. That could be a bit of a tricky situation. Chatsworth is absolutely slides into Open here because they deserve to be there. So, and also in the number 2 seed, the Palisades Dolphins, they'll be taking on the number 7 seed, Granada Hills Highlanders, another team gone through the war, scheduled tough. That's a tough team to have to see in the first round if you Palisades. Number 3 seed, the Eagle Rock Eagles. They're taking on the defending Open Division champions, Taft Torador. They did not win their West Valley League, and I'm sure they've been stewing on that for the last week. They'll be taking on Eagle Rock in the first round. And the final matchup in that quarterfinals of Open, the co-champions of the West Valley, the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Elko Royals, will do battle for the third. It might be the fourth time this year. I can't remember off the top of my head now. I think they might have played each other also in a tournament. But the third full-length match in this trilogy happens in the quarterfinals here in the Open division between the two teams that shared the West Valley title. So with that all being laid out in front of you, what really stands out to you as we look at this Open division bracket?
Yeah, I agree. This is basically the West Valley bracket. And it's not a knock on the other programs, but yeah,
because those other programs, for full transparency, so we don't sound like homers. They absolutely deserve to be the top 3 seeds. Yeah,
they've 100% earned it. They deserved it. They all had amazing seasons. But it's like we say all the time. Hey, congratulations! You had a great season. Now here you go. And that's Eagle Rock Taft. You get the defending Open Division champions, the defending top dogs, who were a couple sets away from having a higher ranking in this bracket. But that's the way this game goes. That's the way it rolls. And starting with that one, I don't think there's anything remotely easy anywhere in this bracket, and that's the reason why it's open. I really, really like that Taft Eagle Rock matchup. I think it's going to be something really special, something to keep an eye on. Granada Palisades staying at the bottom of the bracket is just insane in terms of what these programs have done and the way they match up. Granada has definitely shown that they're going to hang around. They're going to be around, and we gotta pay attention to them. And they earned it, squeaking in. Venice Chatsworth. That Chatsworth program really kind of put it together at the end of the year. They twisted some screws. They almost snatched Cleveland City, co-championship away from them, and we're like, no. Don't look past us, right? Because that was an insane match. They were down 2-0. Cleveland felt like they had the sweep going, and Chatsworth came back, beat the brakes off them in that third set, battled through in the fourth, and put up one heck of a fight in the fifth set. So they're very deserving, and that's just to tell Venice that, hey, Venice, watch out. If you don't have your A game, Chatsworth can come up and they can take it from you. So watch out. And I'm going to end where you ended, that Cleveland El Camino matchup. This is the rubber match. They split regular season, co-champs for a reason. They've battled all year, and these are the kinds of matchups where where teams know each other. They know each other's strengths. They know each other's weaknesses. You're not going to fool them with anything, and they're just going to do battle. This is one that I would have loved to have seen, in the finals. But the way everything else shakes out in the city, and how everyone is deserving of where they got ranked, I'll take it. I definitely am going to be excited for the outcome of this one.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, just to reiterate, we don't mean any disrespect to Venice, Palisades, or Eagle Rock. They absolutely deserve to be the 1, 2, and 3 seeds in this bracket. But like I said, one of the things for me that absolute reason why I feel like it is rightful for us this year, at least, look at what your top seed is going to have to go through just to get to the championship. You're going to have to go through 2 West Valley teams to get to the championship as the top seed. You got to beat this Chatsworth team that's going to come in there full of you-know-what and vinegar, because they know that we're the team here that nobody thinks is going to win it. So what if we have the same attitude we had when we played Cleveland in that last matchup in league and say, well, let's make them prove it. Let's make them prove their number 1 seed, right? And then if you get past that, Now you're going to have to take on whoever survives the co-champions of the West Valley League. So it's not disrespect. It's just stating pure fact. You're not going to be able to win a championship without having to go through the West Valley. You're going to have to beat the West Valley to take home a city championship. This year. That's just the way it plays out. And like I said, that Cleveland Elko game promises to be fun. When you look at how the rest of the season broke down, I fully expect this to be a 5-setter. They're going to go back and forth. It's going to be tooth and nail. But here's a team to me that I'm looking at, and I'm saying to myself, just based on what they've done, who they've played, how they've played some of these teams, that Granada Hills team is sneaky. Keep your eye on Granada Hills pulling that upset in the first round. And if they can get past Palisades in that first round, they absolutely would have more than a puncher's chance against whoever survives Eagle Rock and Taft. And we could be sitting here looking at the Granada Hills Highlanders in that championship game when all is said and done. And with that being said, let's hold our feet to the fire. The other divisions, we'll hold off. We're going to wait. We're going to let some things shake out because there's so many teams. There's so many variables. It's hard to pick winners when we don't even know who's going to survive the play-in games in some of those other divisions. So we're going to hold off until we check back in with the playoffs next week. But the one division that we can, with our knowledge, just with the fact that we know it's just the Elite Eight of the city here, we're going to pick our champion of the open division. So you want me to go first or you want to go first? All right. It's on me. I'll go first. That's right. I'll be the first one to step off this ledge. Now, I have been obsessed with all of these teams, all 8 of these teams. I literally will be up at 2:30 in the morning on NFHS watching Venice Gondoliers volleyball because that's just the way my brain works. I like to know what's happening. I like to see everything that's going on, even having useless knowledge that no one outside of my co-host might care about. That's just what that's just what I do. I'm familiar with all of these programs, and I can sit here and tell you if I keep thinking about it, I will change my mind on who wins this tournament for the 3rd time today when I knew we were going to have to make these predictions. So I'm going to stand on what my initial thought was 2 weeks ago when we were talking about who we thought were going to win the West Valley. My gut had told me, based on what I saw, the magic that surrounded this Cleveland Cavaliers program, that something was just in the cards for them. They ended up they were sitting in 3rd. They managed to put it together at the end of the regular season, grab a piece of that Co-West Valley championship. They survived a grueling match in which Chatsworth came back from 2 sets down and almost took it from them, but they held it together, and there was something about how they galvanized and took that 5th set that makes me want to trust that there is something special with this team. So if I'm going to hold my feet to the fire, I am going to put the Cleveland Cavaliers grabbing a city championship this season in this open division. Who you got?
Yeah, I can 100% agree with you there while going the other direction. I can see it. I feel it. This Cavs team is special. But at the same time, at the exact same time, I look at that team across the way, and it really, really was that close. No, strike all that from the record. We're gonna strike all that from the record. We're gonna see as much as I try to talk myself into going in a different direction. I want to talk myself into having a nice banter about this, going back and forth. The way that Cleveland team ended the season, they were on the cusp, and then they stormed into the discussion And those 2 wins at the end of the season on Monday and Wednesday, that really solidified it for me. Because a team that can kind of put it together, act like an upstart program, and say, no, 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 no. Everyone here is fine and dandy, but we're going to take this shoehorn and we're going to force ourselves in. And I think they're going to blow the door wide open eventually. So yeah, I'm going to go with you. I'm going to say it's Cleveland. That's a lot of, flowery words for me. But I'm there. I think Cleveland has done enough to take it. And so putting my feet to the fire, yeah, I'm going to say Cleveland takes that championship.
And like I said, you can't go wrong with any name that came out of our mouth in this division, in this particular bracket, because I'm sure each and every one of those teams, if they hear us pick Cleveland, will all say, "Oh yeah, we'll show you." But hey, it can only be one. And for us, we going with the hot hand. How that hot hand finished the regular season. But with all of that being said, there is so much great action that we are about to witness when this playoff gets underway this week. So look out for us in the field. We will be covering, we will be tweeting, we will be letting you guys know everything that's going on. And we will be right back here next week to break down what went down in the first and second rounds to get everybody prepared for the quarterfinals that are going to be next week as well. And we're going to break down and see how many of our teams survived the gauntlet in the first couple of rounds and continue to keep chasing championship dreams. So this was fun. It was good to break down the brackets. And as always, man, leave us a like. Subscribe if you like what you're listening to, because like I said, the best part about this is we're just in the fall. We're just hitting the peak of the fall coverage. We haven't even gotten into what's coming in the winter. We are still way away from everything that goes on in the spring, and we're going to make sure that we're the ones that bring it all to you. Make sure you go to valleysportstelegram.com. We have writers in the field. They're writing beautiful stories about everything that's happening that we can get our legs and eyes and ears to. We have the power lists that are coming out. The final one for volleyball for the regular season is coming out. Make sure you look out for that one. We got a football power list coming out. We're also going to have an episode dropping here of ATV, recapping week 9 of what happened in the city section. It's Halloween week. It got a little spooky out here, but make sure you tune in for that. And also follow us on our social medias. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, everywhere that we are, VST_media. We are constantly having a presence and dropping content for you all to enjoy and keep up with and be in the know of everything that's going on. So for my partner, Arshavir Sarian, I am Kenny Hodges. Glad we brought you this volleyball coverage. And make sure you come back for more next week. Till next time. Peace.